Hi, hello, and welcome back. Or if you are new here, welcome. My name is Heather, and this video is all about weeks 29 and 30 of my treatment with Spravato. Spravato is an FDA-approved treatment for treatment-resistant depression that's derived from part of the ketamine molecule. The most common side effect of Spravato is dissociation, and I also have a dissociative disorder. So in this series, I share my treatment experiences and tips and tricks that I learned along the way, and my overall progress as I undergo this treatment. I'll put my list of tips and tricks up here real quick for you to screenshot if you'd like. And be sure to check out this video where I go over all of these tips and tricks. I like to begin these videos with a bit of a recap of how things have been going for me outside of treatment. Like any changes that I've noticed, improvements, setbacks, etc. But if you want to skip ahead to the treatment experience, that's totally fine. I'll put a timestamp here for you so you can do that. Just to get everyone up to speed, for the last few months, I've been in the maintenance phase of treatment, where I only go once a month just to help prevent a relapse. But this just so happened to coincide with winter. And I live in the Pacific Northwest, where seasonal depression is very common, and it's something that I have suffered with for years. So I wasn't at all surprised when some of my depression symptoms started to creep back in, specifically fatigue, and I lost that sense that just in general, things are gonna be okay. And I've also lost that appetite and excitement for life that I had gained in the earlier months of my treatment. Though I do want to add, I am still way better than I would have been this time of year if I hadn't done Spravato. Just want to make that clear. To complicate things even more, about a month ago, my pug and emotional support animal died very suddenly and totally unexpectedly, which has been an incredibly painful and also destabilizing loss for me. Although grief and depression are not the same thing, they do have some similarities, such as fatigue, which is a very common symptom of grief, as well as feelings of emptiness and just not really feeling like things are going that swell in life. Essentially, the same depression symptoms I was having prior to Finn's death. Because I've had grief layered on top of my depression symptoms, I haven't been able to get a very accurate read on the actual severity of my depression symptoms. Now, what I can say is I don't think they're getting any worse. I have been gradually feeling better as time goes on. And I haven't noticed any new symptoms. So that's good. But I am keeping an eye on things, which is an important thing for anyone who's grieving to do, because although depression and grief are not the same thing, grief can trigger the onset of depression. So just something to be mindful of. But like I said, I'd started experiencing those symptoms prior to Finn's death, so to help combat this, my provider approved a temporary increase in the frequency of my treatments. Just enough to get me through the rest of spring, which in Western Washington is pretty indistinguishable from winter. So we'll just have to wait and see if there are any changes in the coming weeks. Now, let's talk about the treatment. Not gonna lie, wasn't really looking forward to this one because my last treatment experience was so weird and just not very enjoyable for me. But I do want to point out that I was sick at the time and very dehydrated and also grieving a lot more than I am now. All of which I think were factors in how my last experience played out. But I still tried to take some measures to prepare my mind and body going into treatment, like making sure I ate 2 hours before, made sure to hydrate, and really paid attention to my mental and emotional state going into the treatment, which we already know plays a critical role in the overall treatment experience. Immediately after my third dose, I put on my breathing exercises and guided meditations, which I'm sorry, if you've been following my journey, you've already heard this a million times. But for those of you who are new, I have a playlist of breathing exercises and guided meditations that I listen to at the beginning of every one of my treatments. They completely transformed my treatment experiences from being ones of anxiety and panic-ridden chaos to the most incredible, relaxing, and entertaining experiences. Every time I've skipped this step, I have regretted it. I cannot recommend them enough, and there's a link to that playlist in the description of this video if you want to try them out. Anyway, thankfully, things were going according to plan as far as my experience. I hit the sweet spot really quickly. For those of you who don't know, the sweet spot is my name for what I consider to be the ideal state during treatment. It feels very similar to when your alarm goes off in the morning and your bed has never been comfier and you're not even thinking about your day yet, and you hit the snooze button and settle back in, maybe drift off to sleep, or maybe just stay in that in-between state where maybe you doze off, maybe dream a little. It's a lot like that. So I was already in the sweet spot by the time the third guided meditation came on. That meditation has you visualize a stream running alongside you, and you're supposed to put all of your thoughts that pop up on a leaf and send it down the stream. Normally, my Spravato trip doesn't start until after this guided meditation's over, but as I was putting my thoughts on leaves and sending them downstream, I suddenly ended up on a leaf and was heading downstream. And I just kept moving faster and faster and going through these series of tunnels, like just tunnel after tunnel after tunnel. And my thoughts and feelings morphed into bands of light that wove together in elaborate tapestries. And it was like I was fluid and one with some kind of current moving through the universe. And oddly enough, one of my tattoos was mentioned at this point. It's a quote from a short story in Illusions by Richard Bach that says, "Clinging, I shall die of boredom." In a nutshell, it's a story about these little creatures that spend their entire lives clinging to rocks at the bottom of a river out of fear of what would happen if they let go. One day, one of the creatures has had enough and says that they're going to let go and just trust that the river knows where it's going. And sure, letting go might result in them getting smashed into the rocks and killed, but they know that spending their entire lives clinging, they'll die of boredom. And so they let go. I'll put a link in the description if you want to read it yourself and find out what happens to the creature once they let go. I got the tattoo in my early 20s as a reminder to myself to not cling to anything out of fear of the unknown. And I realized in that moment that since the traumatic event that upended my life, I have been clinging out of fear. I know this is true for a lot of people who are stuck in trauma brain, so to speak. Your brain becomes fear-driven and solely focused on regaining some sense of safety and stability, and maybe stop living in a way that is open to possibility and to the unknown. So that was quite the revelation. From there, I continued moving through all of these tunnels and wormholes, and then suddenly, Miss Finn appeared. Now, I was moving or swimming counter to this infinite golden vortex of everything there ever was and ever will be. And every so often, a beam of light would shoot out from it and connect to me. Each one contained memories of a relationship I've had. Friends, family, Miss Finn. And there was a lot of focus on what was created when we connected. Like that was what really mattered. And I felt this message of reach out and seek these connections as much as you can before they pass you by and it's too late. And I had the thought, what if I had never opened myself up and connected with Miss Finn? All of that love and joy I would have missed out on. What a tragedy that would have been. The messages continued and said that every single one of these connections in this physical realm are temporary. That's just the way it is. But what you create in that time together can remain with you always. It transcends your physical form and this plane of existence. And if you're lucky, you'll make lots of these connections throughout your life. All you have to do is open yourself up to them. The next thing I saw or experienced, it's kind of hard to explain. I was in this pastel universe, and my body looked like a giant block of ice sitting in an endless ocean of colors. And these pastel waves just kept crashing over me. And every time they did, a little bit of each wave would freeze or fuse with me. I was just there, bathing in colors. And for some reason, the word unflappable kept coming to mind. Let me know your guys' interpretation down in the comments. From there, I went back through a bunch of tunnels and wormholes, and then started seeing various time lapses of landscapes. And the rest of my treatment was spent reveling in just this profoundly peaceful state. And moving through tunnels and wormholes and watching various time lapses of landscapes. And every now and again, Finn would pop up. Thanks to my hydration efforts, I had to get up and use the bathroom and broke my immersion. When I came back to the room, I was still very much in the sweet spot, and I had about 25 minutes left. So I curled up in the chair and just spent the rest of the time getting carried away by the music. And then it was time to go. This treatment left me with a lot to think about. I'm eager to see how I feel in the coming days and weeks, if I notice any changes. My next appointment is May 6th. It's like roughly 2 weeks from now. So I'll have an update for you guys pretty soon. If you liked this video or found it helpful in any way, please consider liking it. It helps me out a lot. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions for me, please leave them in the comments and I will respond to them. In case you missed it, I posted a video answering some of your questions about my experience with OSDD, including some about how it affects my Spravato treatments. So be sure to check that out if you haven't already. I hope you all have a great week, and I'll be seeing you next week. Okay, bye.